Om. Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanam Bhunatu Sahaviryam Garvavaham Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavane. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Ishvara Gurureva Param Tasmai Shri Gurave Chinmayam Yati Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharam Charam Tatparam Vaishritam Tasmai Shri Gurave Om Shivji Sankirave Om Shivji Sankirave Om Shivji Sankirave. So generally it is thought that Valmiki Ji's Ramayana is the original Sanskrit Ramayana. However, we see that the Ramayana was written many times over. As I mentioned last week, it was written by, actually the first person that's written it is Shivji. And in fact, Shivji is referred to as Adi Guru because a lot of the scriptures initially came from him. That what's it called? Rendition isn't available. Like we don't have the script of Shivji's Ramayana. Then Agastya Rishi had also written. He definitely taught it. We see over the ages it was there written. I think the first one we know of is Valmiki. Even though it was written by Hanumanji, it was written by Shivji. So Valmiki is the original Sanskrit Ramayana, and it's written very historically. So it's, when you read the Valmiki's Ramayana, it's like a textbook. So not so exciting sometimes, but it's the thing about history is that when you read the text, it can be quite boring. And then sometimes you meet somebody who's a historian and who has love for the subject, and then they tell you, when this happened and his thinking was like this, and this was the mood of the time. And it can be so interesting, right? Like when we see historical movies also. And, it's such a nice perspective to think in that period of time, how it was. So if you just list down the details of history, it can be quite school-like, scholarlistic, but there are teachers of Valmiki Ramayan that are amazing to listen to because of their love for Ramchandraji and the love for Sanskrit and for the culture and for Dharma and for messages in the Ramayana. So we have a few of those in our university, and Swami Ramakrishnananda, who's one of our mission farmers, who's studied Valmiki Ramayan extensively. And when you listen to him, it's like nowhere near boring. You're holding your stomach laughing, and you tearing sometimes because he's just so expressive and such interesting perspectives. Having understood history and having understood the Sanskrit, such wonderful, beautiful perspectives. And then what we see, which is incredibly beautiful, is that because Sanskrit got less and less known, the Ramayana got retold in regional languages. And so that's how Tulsi Ramayan comes about. So Tulsi Das was a great scholar himself. He was a Sanskrit scholar. And it is said that he would start writing because he had this yearning to write the Ramayana. So he would start writing the Ramayana in Sanskrit. And he'd put it down on his desk at the temple in the evening. And in the morning when he'd come, it would be gone. Like disappear. And so he'd start again. He'd write the Ramayana and it would be gone. And then finally he was like, okay, something's not quite right with this. And then he wrote it in Audi. And it was there. It didn't disappear. And that was his way of understanding that Ramji wanted it to be written in Audi. And now there's two things here. Just like when Tulsi Das Ji himself tells Hanumanji that if your Ramayana is there, who's going to read mine? Valmiki is already there in that. Valmiki is already there in Sanskrit. So why to write another one in Sanskrit? But it is also believed that Tulsi Das Ji was a reincarnation of Valmiki. Now this is not foolproof. I don't know this to be 100% true. It has been said, but sometimes it's said you'll understand why it's said, and it's beautiful to say it, but it might not be actually factual. So at the end of Valmiki's life, when he himself thought his greatest accomplishment was to write this Ramayana, thought to himself, but I wrote it in such a way that, doesn't really show how much I love Ram. Because he really loved Ram. But when you read it, it doesn't really come across. Sometimes that writing has different skills of how you can bring out an emotion. And sometimes mood of mind also. That you could have enough love in your heart, but you're so focused on getting the dates right and this thing right and the grammar right, and then the love bit hasn't come out when you've written it. So it was his regret. It was this thing that needled at him that I wrote the Ramayana, but it doesn't really glorify Ram and make people love Ram. And so then it is said that he was born again as Tulsi Das. And so when he writes the Tulsi Ramayan, it's drenched in devotion. In Tulsi Ramayan, like this, it's like gulab jamun that is soaked in that chasni, that sugar syrup, and then just everything just keeps coming out, and it's soft also. So really, Tulsi Ramayan is just drenched in devotion. Even Ravana is a devotee. Marich is a devotee. Even all the Rakshasas in Tulsi Ramayan are wonderful devotees, and they actually secretly love Ram. But Tulsi Ramayan, it's not written like that. Ravana is bad guy. Marich is, selfish, deluded. And there is moments of clarity, moments of maybe not devotion, but there's definitely moments of clarity. So like in Maricha's story, Marich is one of the demons, doesn't matter if you don't know the story. He gets flung by Ramchandraji 800 yojanas. That's like really far. From Lucknow to Bombay is the way how he gets thrown. He gets thrown that far. And so he's now petrified of Ramchandraji. So even if anybody says the word Ra, he starts shaking. Like if you were going to say something else, don't walk on the road. But you said, he starts shaking. Like, really? That's how it's described, that he got so scared of Ramchandraji. And then at the end, Ravana kind of says, you have to do this, and you're going to go trick Ramchandraji. And he says, there's no way I'm going to go anywhere near Ram. And Ravana says, well, then I'm going to kill you. And then he says, okay, great. If I don't do this, you're going to kill me. And if I do this, Ram's going to kill me. Better to be killed by Ram. Whereas in Tulsi Ramayan, it's that, he's been thinking about Ram, and he's been in his fear because he's been thinking about Ram. The love has grown in his heart, and when it came down and Ravana came to him, and he thought, how much better to die at the Lord's of how much better to die at the hands of the Lord than to be dead. So it's like, so like the story is the same, but in Tulsi Das's Ramayan, it's just Ramchandraji is just loved and loved and loved and loved and loved, which is really beautiful, because when we do these kind of things, we want to feel bhakti. We want to grow in bhakti. One of the reasons we study shastras like the Ramayana is so that we can grow in bhakti. But the other Ramayans also, like Tulsi Dasji's original Ramayana, has tremendous benefits without maybe necessarily having that much emphasis on devotion. So we see Tulsi Dasji wrote it in Audi. We see Eknath Maharaj then wrote it in Marathi. Even Eknathji's way of writing the Ramayana is so beautiful, because it was shown in front of him. Like his third eye was seeing a movie of the Ramayana, and he was writing it. And so again, here you see that Ramchandraji wanted it written in Marathi, in the south, in Tamil, into pretty much every language. There's a version of the Ramayana in every language. And so the idea is that the scriptures were never meant to be exclusive. Sometimes we have this sense of the Brahmanas having this elite attitude of they're the only ones who know the scriptures, but it wasn't what's meant. Like the very fact that the Ramayana is in his every language is Ramchandraji's grace, and it's because it was never meant to stay in Sanskrit, stay exclusive. It's meant to reach every single person. And that's Bhagavan's compassion and Bhagavan's grace, that this knowledge has to reach every single person. And so now you see today the Ramayana is in English. Is it a scripture? I don't know if you would consider the English renditions or necessarily scriptures. I mean, there's Gita press translation, which is definitely a scripture. But then you have these more fictional style writings. There's so many of them. There's so many of them. I think about 15 years ago, I had read that series of Ashara Pankar, but since then, there's like 2 more new series on the Ramayana. There's umpteen cartoon versions of the Ramayana. There's one full manga style Ramayana in Japanese. There's a few in Japanese. So if you Google manga style Ramayana, you'll see Ramchandraji drawn in quite a few different ways, because it's been done in different ways. So some of it is in Japanese, some of it is drawn in manga style, but in English or in Hindi or in Tamil, because it's quite popular. Manga style is quite popular in India. So there's umpteen number of animated depicted versions of the Ramayana. There's sung versions of the Ramayana. And now more recently, not so a while ago, maybe 8-9 years ago, there's Sita's narration of the Ramayana by Chitra Roy, a Garden of Love, Forest of Enchantment. Where I got Garden of Love, Forest of Enchantment. And then even more recently, I think 2 years ago, there's KK's version of the Ramayana. So they're fictional, but not completely fictional, because a lot of it stays true to the Ramayana. Like the Forest of Enchantment stayed quite true, and she did a really beautiful job of showing Sita Ji's love for Ram, which was really nice. And I haven't read the one by KK yet, but I've heard very good things about it. So now it's in English. and so easily available. And I think translated to quite a few other languages as well, because especially when they do these cartoon animations, it gets translated into many, many languages. And so we see that the story stays alive by its own charm, but also, more importantly, we have to understand, is that the story stays alive by Ramji's grace. That's why it keeps going. That's why there's always these new interpretations, because this knowledge has to stay relevant and applicable. And it has to be presented in a way that people appreciate. And so Tulsi Ji had to write it in Audi because those people needed it in that language. And today it has to be there in English, and it has to be somewhat sensationalized, because that's what current generation requires. And some of them are more sensationalized than others. But the ones that I have read, at least, are still invoking devotion to Ram, which is great. Because even in Sanskrit literature, sometimes it's overwhelming how much they'll describe body parts. Why? And this is Sanskrit literature. And so people's interest, you try to grab what, you try to highlight what will grab people's interest. And so in the one I read, Ramchandraji's six-pack was described, his glistening skin was described, the sweat bead falling from his foot, into it is elaborately described like some kind of and you're thinking, okay, we are talking about Ramchandraji here. And then we see, but he is described as beautiful and extremely attractive and extremely desirable, even in Sanskrit. So maybe not so much specific about the six-pack, but the essence is brought out in the same way. Why? So that Ram is admired. And that's his grace alone that this story continues. But we will be focusing primarily on the more traditional text. Every now and then I might visit some of the more modern texts, but some of them have some interesting ways of looking at things. Valmiki Ji's story is classic. It's an all-time Valvihar favorite. Anyone listening to any satsang has already heard Valmiki Ji's story, because it is if Valmiki could become Valmiki's story, then you definitely can. No matter how useless, no matter how simple, no matter how hopeless, no matter how lazy, no matter how dumb you are, you can definitely attain great heights. Why? Valmiki's story. It's your go-to story to prove that a sinner can become a saint. Valmiki was Ratnakar Daku, who actually murdered people. Imagine how hard your heart would have to be able to murder a person. I think the maximum I've done is slap someone. You're shocked. Grew up in Africa, guys. Violent country. You had to. Lots of self-defense, all the rest of it. You feel horrible. In that moment, you feel, but afterwards you feel horrible. Right? It's not even such a big deal. No? So the thing is like one of the lower forms of violence. If you actually hurt, you actually injure someone, how horrible you feel. Like even in a car accident, when it's an accident, if somebody else is hurt, you feel terrible. Kill. How hard the heart must be. We'd have to make ourselves so numb. So in tamas, we make ourselves numb. For example, if we lie, we'll feel guilty. It's the way we build. But when there's enough tamas, we lie, and then we think it's fine. So tamas makes us numb, drowns out the voice of conscience. How much tamas required to kill? Even soldiers who go off into war, who have to kill for their duty, all have post-traumatic stress disorder. Even doctors who accidentally lose patients on the table have so horrible nightmares about it, guilt about it, this existential crises about it. How numb a heart must be to have murdered. And then Valmiki meets Narad Muni. That's the other reason this story is so famous. Just one meeting of Satsang. He met Naradji once. He got Satsang once. And what a transformation. The power of Satsang. What an incredible transformation. So most of y'all know the story. I don't need to go into it too much. He thought Naradji would have money. Why did he think Naradji would have money? Because Naradji was smiling. And he said, give me all your money. He said, I don't have anything, but you're smiling. we laugh, but we actually this deluded. We actually think money gives us happiness. We really do. Somebody was once complaining to me about how hard their life was. And everyone's life is hard. I'm not making light of it. Mine is really hard, by the way. Only today. It's already better. And then I was saying, but everyone who's in your situation anyone with kids has to wake up at night, has the teething issues, has this. Anyone who's married has to deal with their spouse and the whims and fancies of the spouse and the grumpiness of the spouse and the desires of the spouse and all the rest of it. And anyone who is, in society gets gossiped about, and everyone who's in society will get compared to other people. And so, why are you thinking you're so special? The answer was like, but so-and-so has a driver. And I thought to myself, you really think that makes things better? The driver only gives you so much headache. They turn up, they don't turn up, or they're listening to your conversations, or they're this thing, or they're that thing, they're that thing. It's so interesting how we're so incredibly deluded. So, Valmiki thought Naradji had money because he was happy. Couldn't believe that you could be so happy and not have money. And then finally, Naradji tells Valmiki, do you know how much sin you're doing? In one version of the story, when I've read it, he shows, I have to get the names right. Naradji shows Valmiki the hell he's going to face. So he starts with saying, all the animals you've killed, they're all waiting for you. Each one will bite you or hurt you the way you've hurt them. And he shows, and there's like this long line, and then each, basically how much sin, how much pain you are creating for yourself by doing this. It's depicted in the way that each animal you've killed, each person you've killed is waiting there. Basically what's being tried to, because you must remember it's being depicted, limitation of language to people of different ages, different backgrounds, different maturity levels, different education levels. Basically what Naradji is saying is, how much pain are you creating for yourself? Because every action has a reaction, and the reactions are going to all be painful because your actions are causing pain. Naradji said, but I'm not doing this myself. I'm doing it for my family. They should share in the pain. And Naradji says that they will. This is the power of Satsang. Our delusions get shattered. So much of what we do is because we think but this person will love me more. This person, never mind love, huh? This person will respect me. I'll be more included in something. So much of what we do is because sometimes I see people starving themselves. Such a paradoxical world we live in. There are people who are actually starving, who so desperately want food. And you have these people who are so wealthy and have so much food and starve themselves. Really, what kind of punya and papa we come with, huh? Like you have such good food access and then you're still starving yourselves. Really, that's papa only. That you have to be so miserable when it's all around you. Why? Sometimes it's very genuinely so the spouse stays interested. How much pain in that? Sometimes spouse is fine. Spouse loves you dearly. All the other people in society will accept me, love me. We can easily judge Valmiki, but we have delusions of our own. Right? Ratnakar thought he won't suffer alone. He was accepted. He wasn't. So he goes to the wife. She says, "Of course, I'm not going to take your skin." I did the story with the Balvina. I think I told you all recently. I did, right? I told you all recently. And I asked the kids, "Would you take your father's sin?" All the kids, unanimously, of course not. That's what Ratnakar's kid said to him, wife said to him, parents said to him. So he goes back to Naraji, horrified. Delusion, when our delusions get shattered, we are horrified that we were so deluded. That whole paper, like, what was I thinking? I wasn't thinking. Like, how could I have made such a wrong assumption? How could my thinking have been so off the point? That's what happens when Satsang breaks our delusion. We are horrified at how foolish we were and how we have made such bad decisions. And so, of course, the logical next question is, now what? Is there any hope for me? And that's why we tell Valmiki's story. Because there is hope for you. No matter how deluded you are, there is hope for you. All you have to do is chant the name of Krishna, the name Shiva. Just turn your attention to the Lord. Turn your mind from whatever it is that you so desperately desired that ended up hurting you, and turn it back to what will never hurt. Turn it back to Bhagavan. And so Ratnakar Daku sat down very sincerely, chanted Ram, 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 Ram. Not even a full mantra, just Ram. Just one word. Ram, 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 Ram. And he sat there for a whole year, more than a year, until an anthill grew around him. The ants chose their own way to build the anthill. Or maybe he didn't look where he sat and he sat next to the anthill or on top of it. And the ants were very cooperative with him being around and just worked around him. But basically, out of this humongous anthill, in the forest, sometimes they can be quite huge, these anthills. Naraji was walking past once again, hears this faint whisper of Ram, 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 and thinks, who's chanting the Lord's name? And finds now Valmiki inside this anthill. And Valmiki means anthill. It's like the most unglorious name ever. Like, who wants to be named anthill? And yet, it's such a beautiful name because he was so lost in chanting Ram that he didn't even realize. Merged out of the earth, almost like a rebirth. Now no longer deluded, touched and purified by Satsang. He is now born anew. He becomes a great saint. And he was alive at the time when Ramchandraji was alive. And Sita Ji was trusted in his care. And so one of the reasons he has written the Ramayana is because Lava and Kush were sitting in his ashram. And Sita Ji wanted them to know the story of their father. So he's composed the Ramayana with Sita Ji and Lava and Kush sitting in his ashram. And so incredibly blessed that Valmiki could have this. Sita Ji is blessed to be able to have Valmiki Ji there as a father to now look after her after she's exiled in Ayodhya. Lava and Kush have him as a father, bringing him up, a guru, but a fatherly figure in the ashram, and he narrates the Ramayana. And so there's definitely a lot of love in his heart as he wrote the Ramayana. But also because he's in that mode of teaching, immense wisdom in his heart. And I actually quite like the Valmiki Ramayana because Ramchandraji is very real in the Valmiki Ramayana. There's moments where he gets sad, genuinely sad. In Tulsi Ramayan, it's just Leela. He never gets sad. He knows he's Brahman. He just puts on a sad face for your benefit. Valmiki Ramayan, it's very, very real. So, there's this bit in Sundarkand, I think it's in Sundarkand, where Hanumanji goes to look for Sita Ji in Lanka. And, the description of Lanka given in Valmiki Ramayana, before Valmiki starts writing the description, he says, Brahmacharis are not allowed to read this next bit. Brahmacharis are those practicing self-control and trying to live a more celibate life. Not allowed to read this book. Now, how does he know it? Because he was Ratnakar Daku, remember? Been there, seen that. Oh my gosh, the description of Lanka is not very different to Hong Kong, Lanka, Hong. I kid you not. Of course, I haven't been. So this is second-hand information. I haven't been to Lanka, I haven't been to Lanka, I found, but it kind of sounds the same from what people are telling me. So Hanumanji's going through Lanka, looking for Sita Ji, seeing this immense sensuality, and he stops. This is in Valmiki. And he starts praying to Ramchandraji, please don't let me get deluded or tempted. So real. So completely real. I don't know what that question is, but I think they're asking for where Valmiki's Ramayana is available. Gita Press. Gita Press is your best translations of any of the Ramayana. Valmiki Ramayan talks about Lava and Kush. It's there in Valmiki. But we'll get to Lava and Kush is at the very end. We haven't started yet. Ram and Sita haven't met yet. We've got a while to go. Okay, so Valmiki ji. Life is beautiful, and that's the setting of how he wrote it. And I think one of the reasons Valmiki Ramayan, and this is personal interpretation, I think one of the reasons it's so real is because he himself had been so deluded enough to be, infatuated with his wife, to go to the extent of theft and murder, and he fell so low that it was very real for him. Having shortfalls are really very real for him. And so we'll be seeing Tulsi Dasji's Ramayan, but I will refer back to Valmiki Ji's. And there's another Ramayan, Adhyatmana Ramayan, which is written by Veda Vyasa. This Vyasa Ji, of course, has written all our scriptures. But this is, if you read that one, it's like a pure Advaitic Vedantic text. It's like not Leela of Bhagavan at all. It's like Brahman was walking down the street. Brahman met Brahman. Brahman knew that was Brahman. I'm exaggerating only just a tad. It's really like that. It's just completely Advaita. So every now and then we might touch on that Ramayana as well, but depends how Vedantic we want to be. Okay, so now and then Guruji's Ramayan, which we're going to be following, is Tulsi Ramayan, and that story also is very well known to most of you sitting here. But in case somebody is new to the Ramayan, we will do this story as well. Tulsi Dasji is just one of those, like if you make a movie on Tulsi Dasji, he'd be one of those characters that you just like from the first scene onwards. Like he's such a bicharo that you like Harry Potter, already lost his parents, orphaned, like poor baby. That's exactly Tulsi Dasji. He was orphaned and he was left on the doorstep of the ashram. So really already it pulls at your heartstrings, right? But interestingly, as a baby, he had all his teeth. And I don't know why this features in the story, but it's always said, and I guess it's to point out that he was unique. And why did he have to be born with teeth? Because his first word is Ram. Now you can't say Ram without teeth. That would be fun. You can try. Okay. Yeah, you can't try. You can try asking somebody who doesn't have to. You won't be able to say the word Ram. I think that's why they say he's born with teeth, because they wanted his first word to be Ram. And is this actually proper kosher? I don't know. Maybe his first thought was Ram. That's possible, especially if he's a reincarnation of Ram, human possible. 100% his first thought can be Ram. Maybe when he finally spoke, his first word was Ram, because by then you have those two teeth. But his first word was Ram. You have to be born with a lot of punya. Your first word to be Ram. Most babies' first words are da, 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 da. For some reason, that seems to be the easiest sound. Or that's usually what babies do the most. Proper full first word being a recognizable word, very rare. So already you see that he's a highly evolved soul, as his first word is. So he was born and left at the doorsteps of the ashram. The Guru is taken into the ashram, and now when you're born in an ashram, you living the ashram life means you're waking up, you're meditating in their Sanskrit class every day. And so, as I mentioned already, Tulsi Dasji was a great Sanskrit scholar. He was very, very, very good at Sanskrit. Sanskrit's really hard, so you have to be super intelligent. There's lots of memorizing in Sanskrit. He had the knack. He knew it. He also knew the entire Ramayana, and so the Guru had trained him and taught him the Ramayana, so that he could then create a livelihood for himself. So he was taught how to do all the pujas, he was taught how to teach the Ramayana. And so he could go to people's homes and do the story of the narration of Ramayana and get picture. So that he wouldn't be dependent to live in the ashram for the rest of his life. He was young, he was a kid, he didn't join the ashram by his own accord. Maybe he wants to live his own life. So some kind of livelihood he can have through this means. And that's what the Guru was thinking when the Guru taught him everything. Of course, in the ashram, you're going to get given all the knowledge anyway, but he was groomed so that he could leave the ashram and live his own life. Yeah, until he chose otherwise. So he does choose that. He does choose to leave the ashram and try and live grahastha life. Normal person, normal desires. And you would think, when you initially hear baby left on the doorstep of the ashram, you're thinking, poor baby being abandoned. You're not thinking, lucky soul gets to live in ashram. Right? Why aren't we thinking that? We should be thinking, look how much punya he's come with, that he's now living, he was brought up in satsang. Here you got Valmiki, just one moment of satsang changing his entire life. Here and now here you got Tulsi Dasji, grew up in satsang. 24/7 satsang, because he's in the ashram. Of course, when you're in the ashram 24/7, it's not always satsang, because your mind isn't always halfway. So you'll pick a fight with someone, and then you're not in satsang. But more often than not, there is satsang going on, there is chanting going on. And Guru is there, and Guru is being able to correct and to guide. But he chooses, he wants normal grahastha life, finds a very sweet wife. I always say this, he fell in love. Fortunately, she loved him back. Because, that would really hurt if she didn't. But she did. They get married. They're very happy together. And this is also normal. When you feel like you've been abandoned and you haven't had anyone, clingy. He was very, very, very clingy. Anyone in a relationship will know this can be highly annoying. Some people like it. Some people genuinely like it. They like when other people are clingy. Makes them feel validated, important, needed. And we want to feel needed. We definitely want to feel needed. Like when a kid chooses for us to pacify them, we think, oh, I'm so important. I'm so lovable. It's nice. She wasn't one of those types who liked clingy people. She liked him. He grew up in an ashram. He was intelligent. He had a good background. And suddenly now so clingy. She didn't sign up for the clingy bit. I mean, you don't have to be brought up in an ashram to be clingy. There's plenty, right? Genuinely, I think something went wrong in her house. Her mom wasn't well, something. So she went to her mom's house. Leaves a note for him saying, I'll be back tomorrow. Whatever the reason, I think it was mom wasn't. He was so attached to her that he couldn't stay with her. And then this makes very interesting storytelling. It's raining. Imagine Typhoon 10. And he still goes out in this horrible, harsh weather. Why? To meet her. He doesn't want to live without her. One night you can't live without her. Actually, early days of falling in love, they can't. Early days of falling in love, how much they look at their phone, no? Every 2 seconds. How much they have to say to each other. Wow. After even 15 years of marriage, 10 years of marriage, 5 years of marriage, I don't think you have so much to say anymore. Those initial days, they were newly married. It was unbearable for him. We've all been there. We've all been so deluded to think, can't live without. That's basically that feeling he had. Can't live without it. Have to have it. And so it doesn't matter what it costs. So he crosses the river, which is in flood, holds onto a dead body to be able to cross the river because the river's in flood, so he was going to drown, so he needed to hold on to something. So he kind of stunk now. Although I don't know how he continued to stink because it's raining. He should have washed up, right? But when he gets to her, she can smell it. So must have been really, really strong. Then he's walked a significant distance. He gets to the house. Of course, it's in the middle of the night. Everyone's asleep. So he throws pebbles on the window, but it's raining. So she's not going to know that someone thrown pebbles. So he climbs up, and in the process of climbing up, he tries to hold on to a rope, which turns out to be a snake. How Vedantic is that? Looking for support in a rope which wiggles away from him. It was a snake. We're doing it all the time, aren't we? I don't know if he actually held onto the snake, but this is a significant part of the story that's always narrated. And I think it's because of this, because we hold on to something thinking it's so real and it's so sturdy and it's so helpful. Like he's holding on to the feeling of, I need to be with her. And it escapes. Because it's not what we think it to be. We think it's a rope and it's a snake the whole time. It's just tricking us. But no, it's not tricking us. We're the ones that got tricked. We see it to be what it's not. That's the bottom line, right? We see it to be what it's not. We just see it for what it is and everything's well. So finally she realizes, because he's banging on the door, she opens the shutters. She's scared, somebody banging on the door in the middle of the night. So she screams. Sorry, she didn't open the shutters. She screams. He opens the shutters. He falls into the room. The father, the brother, the whoever else is in the house hears her scream, all come running up through the door. What happened? What happened? What happened? They all look at him, drenched, lying on the floor, looking at her like, oops. So then, of course, they're going to make a comment. He couldn't live without her even for one night. So these love fools or love sick fools, whatever comment they would have made her cringe. Like, your family's opinion of your spouse, it's very, you feel so judged, that's the whole point of attachment, right? You add this value. Like, they're making fun of him, what's it got to do with you? But no, when it's your spouse, you will feel. When it's your kid, you will feel. So now where will that anger come out? On him, on me. And what she says is what's so famous. What did she say? I know you. If you loved your even half as much as if you loved me. You have to be a strong woman to say this, huh? Because even as you're saying it, you're setting yourself up. If you were attached to half as much as you were attached to me. Now, it's really a slap in the face because his job is to teach the Ramayana. That's his livelihood. That's what he did on a daily basis. And in the Ramayana, you're telling people that as you love Ram, it gives you freedom. Come. Transmigration. Fancy word. What I can say. So it's like saying you preach, but you not practice. Family members love to say this to each other. You go to Satsang and then you do this. They love saying this to you. So we all hear, right? We've all heard. You say this, but you don't do it. Kids are very quick to say it to us. Spouses may be sweet sometimes, can be harsh sometimes. But kids will say you fucked. You said, oof. And usually when somebody points out our flaw like that, our hypocrisy or our inability to do what we ourselves value, right? We value it, then we don't do it. Like if you're vegetarian but then you wear leather and somebody points it out at you, you feel like, but at least I'm vegetarian. We get defensive. First reaction when people point out to us our hypocrisy or our shortcoming, we will get defensive. Another one is denial. No, of course not. They say, you say you're going to, truth is so important, but you only lie. I never. This is the good thing about Tulsi Ramayan. He took it very seriously. First, he was so hurt. So initially, that's what happens when somebody points out to you that you are flawed. It's very ouch. Plus, it's being pointed out by this person who adores. He adores her. She only slaps him in the face with this dialogue. It's very ouch. It's very, very, very difficult. This is why pain is sometimes a great blessing in our lives. It's the thing that shakes us out of our tamas. He knew what he had to do. He wasn't doing it. One Tappar wife came. She didn't physically hit him. Huh? This line. If you were even half attached, as much attached to him, you would have moksha. Makes him think, what am I doing? Like I said, she was a really brave woman for saying that. Maybe she said it out of anger, but it was the Lord's wish. For he really detaches from her. Not easy to detach when he was so attached. And he really attaches himself to her. Which of course was the end of their marriage. And he lived afterwards like his guru in the ashram. Became very, very, very well-known saints. So these two great masters are going to be our guide as we navigate through the Ramayana. And both of them have this beautiful quality of failing before they succeed. And that's why like Ramji in the Ramayana is so perfect. So perfect, so perfect, so perfect. It's almost like he's unreachable. And who's reaching for him? Tulsi Ramayan and Valmiki, who have fallen so low. So. They're still reaching for perfection because they still can and they attain it. Both of them attain Ramji's grace in their lives, which is why we're still talking about them when we talk about Ramji. And so even though he's so perfect, he makes himself very reachable. And as you read the Ramayana, one of the interesting things is Ramji doesn't say much. We've just done the Mahabharata. There's so much dialogue with Krishna. He did this, and then he makes a face, and then he picks up a weapon, and then he turns, and then he even in his childhood, there's so much, he bats his eyes. He literally flirts. And he's chubby legs, and then he's doing chum chum chum, and then he's stealing the button, and then he's dancing with the gopis. There's not much you can, and really only Krishna has so much you can say about. You read about Shivji, nothing he's meditating. Kills a few demons. He teaches. Done. Like really not much, huh? Opened eyes, stop meditating. Closed eyes, meditating. No batting eyes, no, none of this. You read the whole Ramayana. What did Ramchandraji do? The Ramayana. There's no he did this, he went here, he went there. Really, it's so infuriating. I mean, it's beautiful, but because you must remember, I ready to try and find. Like when I did the Krishna stories, I could pluck out this from the Bhagavatam, pluck out this from the Bhagavatam, and make it into individual books. Try to pluck out anything from the Ramayana, which is gone. Like one incident of Ram, just where he's like, no, you have to do the whole Ramayana. Even hardly they speak. Hardly Ramchandraji speaks. Sage Vishishta will speak this whole long dialogue, and Rama says, yes, Gurudev. How do you make a story out of that? And Sita speaks even less. You can count. You can count on one hand how many lines there's whole dialogues from Sita. And yet, the Ramayana is Ramchandraji's glory and Sitaji's glory. It's phenomenal. It's really, really phenomenal. You'll see what I mean. Any questions? Little bit more story of Tulsi Dasji, I think. Yeah.
Why are the Japanese so obsessed?
Both, huh? With Mahabharata also. The Japanese have a lot of the Mahabharata as well. Actually, a lot of people, I don't know why. I don't know. But Ramayana we'll see is Japan has manga. I think a little bit it has to do with Hanumanji. Hanumanji is very fascinating. And just about it, if you want stories on Hanumanji, it's Ramayana. But definitely there's a fascination with Hanumanji. But even with Ram and Sita, there is. Why? They got good taste. Why is the Japanese fascinated? They're also fascinated with peaches, but who knows? I don't know. But Ramayana, I mentioned this last class. It's all this. There's this whole belt, Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand. That's it, right? Malaysia. Well, Malaysia, the Indians, not the local country. Who's local Indians? Good question. The Malays, I don't think they. It's very Indian. In Malaysia, the Ramayan's Indian. Whereas in Bali, the Ramayan's Balinese. It's in their native language. They have their own costumes. They have their depiction of Sitaji, the way she's portrayed. In Thai also, it's portrayed very differently. In Thai, everything is facing up, right? Facing the heavens. The cap, the clothes, everything. In Malaysia, it's Indian. Kamba Ramayan. But it is fascinating. Ramayana is fascinating. When you're in the Ramayana, it's so fascinating. When you're not in it, you can think, oh, no. The minute you open it, it's so fascinating. Om. Sarve bhavantu sukhina. Sarve santu niরাময়াঃ। Sarve bhadram pashyantu ma kaśyat dukkhaṃ bhaveत्। Asato ma saṅgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityunmaya gamaya. Om Purnamata Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevamshishyate. Om Shanti Hari Om.